Our top focus on World DNA today. After leading a huge multi-country yoga celebration at the UN headquarters in New York, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now in Washington, D.C.
It's a packed schedule for him on Thursday. He is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with President Biden, address a joint session of the U.S. Congress and attend state dinner at the White House.
Right. The U.S. capital city has rolled out the red carpet for the Prime Minister. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcomed the Indian Prime Minister at the White House. Biden is aiming to tighten his relationship with the leader of a nation seen as a pivotal force in Asia for decades to come. The pomp-filled state visit marks their 10th meeting since Biden came into office. Biden's hosted a private dinner for Prime Minister Modi at the White House. Washington wants New Delhi to be a strategic counterweight to China and sees India as a critical partner. Prime Minister Modi is seeking to raise the influence that India has on the world stage.
Now, on Thursday, Prime Minister Modi will be welcomed with full military honors at the White House. He will then hold the crucial bilateral talks with President Joe Biden, after which the two leaders are expected to address a press conference and take questions as well. In the evening, the Prime Minister is scheduled to address the joint session of the U.S. Congress. He is the first Indian Prime Minister to do so twice.
The Prime Minister will conclude his day with a state dinner at the White House hosted by the Bidens.
Now let's take you through the likely deliverables of the state visit. Quoting sources, news agency Reuters stated that the US is set to ease visa for skilled Indian workers as PM Modi visits the State Department, who could announce that some Indians and other foreign workers on H-1B visas will be able to renew those visas in the US without having to travel abroad. Indian citizens are by far the most active users of the US H-1B program. They made up 73% of the nearly 442,000 H-1B workers in fiscal year 2022.
On the agenda of the state visit is expanding bilateral cooperation in the defense industry and high-tech sectors. India is expecting to get access to critical American technologies that Washington rarely shares with non-allies.
A deal for General Electric to produce engines for fighter jets on Indian soil is also on the cards. Another expected announcement is India's purchase of 31 armed MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones made by General Atomics, worth $3 billion.
Now, the world's two largest democracies are also likely to make announcements on climate. It's an area where there have been various opinions on the responsibilities of developed versus developing countries.
Now, on the 23rd of June, the Indian Prime Minister will be hosted by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Washington and New Delhi have been moving closer for 2 decades now. Successive U.S. presidents have displayed bipartisan support for stronger ties with the emerging Asian economy and regional power. President Joe Biden has built on that legacy and expanded its cooperation.
Now, for more on this, we're joined live by our correspondents Siddhant Sibul from Washington, D.C., Molly Gampir from the White House, and Susan Tehrani from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. Now, my first question to you, Siddhant, first. The Prime Minister has said that our goal is to make this decade a tech decade. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we know that the Indian government has been emphasizing on technology. India has its own flagship programs like Digital India. During this entire visit, we will see a visible manifestation of how India and the United States work together on technological convergences and how they become trusted technological partners, and that has been emphasized with the launch of the initiative by both the NSAs earlier this year in Washington and then last week in New Delhi. That is what the 1.2 track when it comes to critical technology and emerging technologies. But essentially, India as a growing economy, it's the 5th largest economy, and of course the most populated country, needs technology, and it sees United States as an ideal partner, and the Americans are also keen to partner with New Delhi, given that they see India as an important partner in the wider Indo-Pacific region, especially against China. So when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Joe Biden sit together for talks at the White House on Thursday, we will see repeated reference on technological convergences and how both countries can work together. But this is a pillar of the relationship. But I would also like to talk about the situation on the ground. I'm standing in Washington, D.C., and the city is decked up with the Indian and the American flags. But it is a very windy city, and it is raining cats and dogs as well. So tomorrow we get to know how the Guard of Honor ceremony takes place amid this heavy rain here in Washington, D.C.
Molly, I'd like to come to you next. With PM Modi's state visit, how do you see the sides strengthening their bilateral relations and all the tie-ups that are happening, which are going to be announced here? How do you see that going forward between the two nations?
Well, while the New York leg of the Indian Prime Minister's visit here to the United States was about a lot of symbolism, where he also led the International Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters, and a strong message as far as India's soft power is concerned going out to the world at large. Here in Washington, D.C., and right behind me at the White House is where the Indian Prime Minister was also welcomed by the U.S. President Joe Biden and the First Lady Jill Biden. And this is going to be a crucial 2 days ahead for the Indian Prime Minister, with the jam-packed schedule lying ahead for him. And speaking of how this visit carries the potential of deepening the partnership and the collaboration between the two sides, well, it is a visit which comes with a lot of expectations and wide-ranging announcements that are on the cards, speaking specifically about the two overarching themes, that is defense cooperation and sharing of technology, both of which have been grabbing headlines even ahead of the Indian Prime Minister's visit, given the discussions that have been unfolding already. Given also the deliverables that have been talked about in terms of how the ISET, or the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, can actually take this partnership forward and result in India and the United States becoming trusted technology partners, and the potential that that initiative really has. Also talking about the GF414 deal and how that would once again propel the India-US strategic partnership and take it a step forward. But apart from that, we also have engagements like the one with business delegates, which would mean that there would be stronger business ties that would be forged between India and the United States, which, by the way, has far-reaching potential, as experts have been pointing out as well. And then we will have the Indian Prime Minister also engaging with the Indian diaspora. So that, again, will be a crucial element to watch out for. So it's going to be a jam-packed schedule, a lot of takeaways from this visit. And earlier, when the Indian Prime Minister was welcomed, we saw those visuals also of the local dance studio here, Studio Dhoom, dancers from that studio performing and performing that tribute to regions of India, which has been quite a colourful start to this visit here.
Right. Well, thank you, Molly. Susan, coming to you now. Just want to understand this better. What does India's cooperation and partnership mean for the United States, especially when it comes to countering China?
Yeah, China is really the elephant in the room. While there is no mention of it in any press releases or backgrounders that we've been receiving or officially on the itinerary of Prime Minister Modi and discussions that are expected to be held between President Biden and Prime Minister Modi. However, China really is a crucial aspect for the United States in trying to counter it on the one hand and having a reliable partner in the Indo-Pacific on the other, to be able to have that kind of counterbalance for an open and free Indo-Pacific. China is one aspect, and then we have the issue of technology and disruption caused by artificial intelligence that has worried lawmakers here in the United States. India is spearheading the know-how of AI and alternative technology and emerging technology. This is very important for the United States, the workforce in India, to not only come to the United States, but for U.S. companies to work with Indian companies privately as well. And then you have the issue, of course, of defense, which has been highlighted time and again. But also, it's important to note that while we are in an election year, President Biden did consider that, considering the fact that there are about 5 million Indian Americans around the country, many of them live in swing states, and many of them go to the ballot box and they do vote. So this also has a domestic aspect and an angle to that as well. And it also sets the stage for President Biden's visit to the G20 in India later this year, and for, you know, basically creating an atmosphere that this relationship is very tight and close.
Thank you for all those updates, Susan, Siddhant and Molly. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with you as you keep us abreast with all the updates coming in from Washington.